She'll be first, though. Okay, hello, everybody. I just want to say hello, and this is the Justice and Memory Team that was put together. It was put together because the Black community called Town was erased back in the 60s when Athens and UGA entered into a urban renewal contract. So this team was put together to work through two avenues of atonement. So we just wanted you to know that. We're going to, just to give you a brief overview, we're going to have a moment of silence and then we're going to turn it over. I'm going to deviate from the agenda and turn it over to Jen because we have a guest today and the guest is going to be talking. Okay, let's do a moment of silence for London Town descendants and what all is happening in our country today. Thank you. Okay, Jen, I know Bobby is on the call, and I don't know who all is on the call, but I know Bobby's there on the phone. No, he's visual. So everybody's visual that's here today.
Great. Great. Would you like me to provide a brief introduction and update, and then we can turn it over to our guest?
Yes.
Okay. So this will be an update on the Walk of Recognition, and most people here will remember that we approved a general sort of concept plan for the Walk of Recognition along Finley. That was late last year, actually, I think towards the end of 2020. And we've talked about it a couple of times, and you'll recall there's 4 points along the walk, 3 of which are more historical and informational pieces of signage that will be created by somebody and installed. But the 4th point was more of an artistic installation that we wanted to be. We didn't, we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we wanted it to be something that would celebrate the neighborhood. And again, be something more artistic, yet to be determined. Ideally, we'd like it located at Baxter and Finley, but we understand we have to deal with site issues. So we'll work with that. So we've been in what I'll call the implementation phase, and I've received a lot of excellent support and feedback from Crystal, Blaine, members of the subcommittee. And it was suggested by Crystal that I meet with Dr. Lynn Saunders-Bussell, who's our guest here today. And that ended up being a really great connection. Dr. Saunders-Bussell is associate professor in the Lamar Dodd School of Art, doing art education. And I explained that we have this this public art project that we want to do. We want it to engage the community, be collaborative, be hands-on, all these things that Lynn will say more about in a moment. And it turns out Lynn has extensive experience in this field and has in fact done a public art project in Lafayette that I saw some of the details on and was able to discuss with a few of the subcommittee members. And it really has a lot of the components that we're hoping to capture in the 4th point on the Walk of Recognition, in terms of engaging the community, being a really neat public art piece, and other things that we'll hear more about. So as I mentioned, Len and I have spoken a few times. We're in the process of sort of mapping out what a specific collaboration with Len and her classes. You'll hear more in a moment. Len has a plan, if folks like it, to integrate this public art project across 3 separate courses that she teaches. And what we're doing is inviting Dr. Bussell here today to share the Mosaic project, what it is, some of the basic components of it, answer questions, and see if the subcommittee wants to make a formal recommendation that we do this collaboration. And it would require, laying out a series of steps and agreements and those kinds of things. But so I guess I'll just turn it over to Lynn to give a relatively quick presentation on what the project is and sort of the philosophy behind it. And then we'll open it up for Q&A to both of us, to either one of us.
Okay.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. As Jennifer said, my name's Lynn, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about a potential project. But first, I want to congratulate you all on all the work that you've already done. And you'll see in a minute that I think about the work that you've done as the art project has already begun. So starting with that, certainly I know Jennifer mentioned a mosaic. And so in its physical form, it would be, somebody's talked about a wall. So you would have a wall that on which a tile and mirror mosaic would be installed by the community. The process that I used was learned by a man up in Philadelphia named Isaiah Zagar. And why I love the process is because from the beginning to the very end of the process, the community is involved. It's very participatory. And all along the way, there are ways that people are creating things, and those are then implemented into the mosaic. So even though the mosaic may not be, and I call it raising a mosaic because it always reminds me of kind of group efforts, even though it might not be raised until the spring, the work would start almost immediately as we would learn more about the stories and the images that are important based on your work. Then certain opportunities would be offered for the community and community members, people that the committee feels need to be integrally involved to create artwork that would then be implemented into the mosaic. And one of the key features, I think, of this kind of work for me, and it's when it really, when I learned about participatory art projects, was I realized that kind of the raising of this mosaic and the making of these pieces, that's powerful in and of itself. I mean, it's a beautiful mosaic, brightly colored, all these broken tiles, but also small pieces of mirror throughout. And I'll show you some images in a few minutes if Crystal can help me get those, if I can share my screen. But what I learned is because it's time intensive and you're sitting there with others at this wall, literally gluing pieces of mirror and glass on the wall, that there's a lot of conversation that goes on, a lot of talk, a lot of discussion. And so what I realized is that was as important as what was ending up hanging on the wall. And so there is a participatory piece here to this that's significant in my mind. And so I'll tell you kind of what I'm imagining it, something like this looking like. So it would start certainly with me learning more and more about what it is that you've done and learning more about what images are important. And also learning what stories need to be told. That's important on my part. Then I would imagine we would have meetings with all of you or those of you who want to be involved to then try to shape that story and think more about that design. Then over a period of a year, we would be having multiple workshops that community members can be invited and where they would actually be making some of the items that go into the larger mosaic throughout the year. And so in terms of how the UGA students might be able to contribute and support the project, I have a couple of options there. I will say that my work as an art educator focuses on social practice work, socially engaged art, contemporary practices that are participatory in nature, and focus on art as a mechanism for social change. So that's the way I teach anyway. This is what we do anyway. And so the opportunity to be able to contribute in some fashion to help bring this to life is really exciting to me. But I do have four courses that are four options that I think might be useful and ways that UGA students can support this. So one would be I teach a class in the summer and it's called Socially Engaged Art as Pedagogical Practice. And basically this is, it's a new contemporary form of art whereby artists are they're as interested in a product or an object, but they're also interested in what happens around the making of that with community. So it's perfect course for something like this. So I could see the students meeting with some of you and working with you and talking with you about what you think a design would look like. What would this be? I also teach a first-year Odyssey. It's a freshman kind of first-year class for people who are entering the university, and it's a craftivism course. And craftivism combines both activism and craft. And the purpose is to bring people together to actually make things, and while making things, to discuss issues of importance to the community. So I could see those students, part of what they're kind of charged to do is not only to learn about craftivism, but then to think about, okay, well, how would you implement this into the community? And so to me, again, it's a perfect opportunity for them to design a community workshop with, again, input. Everything along the way would be looking to you for the input. And then invite members of the community that all of you feel like should be in on the conversation. And there are even things where you provide what they call crafter thought questions, where important questions are answered and discussed while you're sitting there making whatever thing you're making. So that would be one way that they could be involved. And again, I think it would be a way to support what it is that you've already done so well. And then I teach a secondary curriculum course in the spring, and we've collaborated with the students over at Clarke Middle and Clarke Central in the past. And so possibly being able to work with those students to also then continue the process. By then, I imagine a design would be approved. Again, it's you who approve it, you who help, we draw it up, I'll let you look at it, and you make a decision on it. So then they would continue to help us create the pieces, the parts. There are all kinds of really interesting techniques for how you cut the mirror. They could be doing that. And then maybe even being able to involve them, and again, more community members as we go, and possibly another workshop in preparation materials. And then ultimately by the spring, have actually begin the installation of the mosaic over a period of 1 to 2 weeks. When you involve the entire community. And I've actually, one I'll show you, we actually raised it in a week. I don't want to do it that fast. I want to be very careful with this particular project. But what you do is you have volunteer groups sign up. And anyone can actually go up, learn how to put the mastic on the back of the tile, press the tile in. Anyone can learn how to grout it. We mix our own grout, we mix our own colors. So there's a lot of, and it's exciting. I mean, even children have lined up along there and spent time with it. So you can actually bring people through in shifts. So in a sense, the community raises the mosaic. It's not me out there. It's not like a traditional public art project where you hire someone, an artist comes in and they paint a mural. It's very different from that. So I do want to communicate that. And then finally, I'm involved in a program. There's a new contemporary art center downtown called the Athenaeum. And we received a grant to actually run 2 programs, one for youth and one for children. And so I could see them even being involved in that. And again, that's new. We haven't finalized all the details, but I could see them being really involved in this as well. So those are some ways that I can see the students supporting this effort. And if I can, I don't know, Crystal, is it possible for me to share a screen, or do you know?
We're gonna do our best. Do you see a share button?
I do, but it's gray.
It's gray.
It's gray.
Okay. Lynn, can you send me an email?
I did. I sent you one with a PowerPoint attachment.
I've searched for your name and our email has been down all day. Please forgive me.
Okay, you don't see it?
Would you please resend it to me?
Oh, well, give me a minute.
Right up.
Well, I want to thank you, Lynn, for putting this in place, because that would allow us to bring our grandchildren in, and our nieces and nephews who have heard us talk about this, and the school children from either elementary or high school that will learn about Leonardtown as well.
Mm-hmm.
So and thank you for allowing us to be a part of a participatory way, so we can tell the story, so we'll know exactly what's going to go up on this mosaic.
Yeah.
So,
and hopefully we can get the image of the prior project that was completed, because it really will come to life in your mind when you can see the actual finished project from the other collaboration. And so I know we have you know, do we have some time for questions, Ms. Hattie? Can we take, does anyone have questions? Or, and I will say, Lynn and I have been working on a more specific document that'd be kind of more of a memorandum of understanding about the steps. You know, we imagine needing a project coordinator that oversees certain aspects. So we have a lot more details we can circulate for the committee's review shortly, but we wanted to get the general idea out there to the full committee because not everybody had heard or seen about this, and get reaction if it feels like something we want to engage with to be part of the walk of recognition. Are there questions or comments?
All right, I'm gonna send this. Hold a second, and I'm happy to. Trying to, Crystal, mine's going really slow here, so let me send it. I just sent it, so hopefully you get it.
I think it would be good to, we were talking about 4 points. If people can walk down Finley Street, they can see the stories that we would like to put on those 4 points. So when they stop, they can read and understand about Leonardtown.
Hmm.
So, and the mosaic, I'm hoping that will be the first one. So that's the first stop. And then we have other stops down that we want to work with her on, Jennifer on, so we can get the correct information up on these 4 points. So when they stop and they can read about Leonardtown.
That's helpful, Miss Hattie, because I was going to ask the combination of folks on the call how the narrative pieces would interact with the kind of art piece.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the other thing that I think when you finally get to see the pictures, what's really beautiful about this process as well is we can actually take existing tile and handwrite text. So it's really cool. So in other words, if there was a story or there was a quote that you wanted us to handwrite on tiles,
Mhm.
that can happen. Which I think allows you then to bring that story to life. So that's one way we can get text in there and tell the story. That's another reason I like this process.
Well, once we sit down with and all and talk about it and share the stories that we want on these this walk of recognition, it's going to be real. I think it's going to be beautiful, and it'll be interesting as well.
And the time frame is you know about a year or so, which obviously is what's needed to do any to do a project, especially of this scale, with the components of working with the community and having the workshops, and then the hands-on community-based even installation of the project. So Lynn and myself and probably somebody else would sort of work with the project coordinator on this. The 3 other points on the walk of recognition that are going to be more conventional, informational, historical signs with images and text will be developed by somebody else. So it's kind of a 2-part approach to completing the entire walk of recognition. But again, I hope you can see the final project, but you can probably, if not, we'll email. But
Email them. Yeah.
I mean, I've thought through and talked with several people about a variety of ways to address this final art installation part of the walk, and this just to me hits all the things we want. Right? It's collaborative, it's participatory, it's public art. It brings UGA in, it brings UGA students in, and I think there's value to that because I think we've all encountered, we've found that students want to learn about this, that they really want to know this stuff. And this is a really great way to bring them into the process, but also still have the community involved. And Lynn has been so clear, like this is driven by the community, the members of this committee, not me, right? And so it would really be something that we would all be working together on with other people from the community. So we definitely want to put together more specific information for everyone to review, but we kind of wanted to get a sense from the room, the WebEx room, if the committee is supportive of us moving forward with formally, with giving you all the documentation and information you'd need in terms of all the agreements, next steps, timeline for us to actually decide if this is what we want to do. Because obviously, Lynn has to integrate this across several classes. So we want to have a pretty solid agreement if that happens so that Lynn can then build out classes that involve this project if there is support from the committee.
I think we
still, unfortunately, I haven't gotten anything yet and my screen's still gray. So I don't know whether there's something I'm supposed to be doing on my end.
I
I
have done
think
all
that
that I'm able to do.
We had a
However,
major server down today,
Okay,
so
all
everything's
right.
moving a little bit slowly in email on our end.
Mhm.
is
Sorry,
there a
Lynn.
link
That's
that I could
okay.
pull up now, though,
Just
that
to give
could
you a little more
demonstrate it?
information, try to paint a picture of it. So again, it's composed of tiles that are actually broken. They're not cut. So this kind of mosaic allows actually people to bash tile, which is very therapeutic at times. So we teach people how to do that safely. And so all the tile is broken by everyone. The other pieces that are involved are what we call clay medallions. And these people make these clay medallions and they press different objects, found objects into those medallions that they choose. There are also these things we called, this is Isaiah Zagar's term, not mine, grouted globs. But these are beautifully kind of colored pieces of grout where you can, again, press found objects into, so that, let's say a bunch of, I don't know, let's say a bunch of first graders make some from a class. Those are then integrated into that wall. So that first grader walks up to that wall forever and looks up and says, that's the piece that I made. The thing that holds all that together, so it's not just thrown up there, the thing that holds all that together is a drawing. Okay, so first a drawing is put in place. So there is a structure to it. And again, that drawing comes from this committee. And then once you have that in place, then those other pieces are put in, and then the tile and the mirror glued in. The grout that's used is a grout where we can mix up the colors. So they're typically very bright colored grouts, blues and yellows and that kind of thing. I think what's most beautiful for me and a little bit symbolic is that when you walk, the first time I walked up to one, you walk up to it and there's so much mirror that you actually the wall dissolves and you see your image in the wall. So you become part of that wall, which I think is really a lovely kind of thought anyway, that you become part of it. And so the light is beautiful on it. If we were able to get some kind of spotlight in the evening, it would stand out in a big way on a corner that you're talking about. I've done these on walls that were existing walls, the sides of buildings, but in this instance, a wall would need to be made. And so the idea that we could even talk about what that wall might look like. And I could get some help from the folks over in sculpture, because I don't know how to build a cement wall. So we're gonna have to get that done, but get some help as to, does it need to be a solid wall? Does it need to be multiple pieces? What could we do with that in and of itself? So there are a lot of questions kind of around it, and I'm happy to, I don't have the image for you, but what kind of questions do you have?
I think that we got a good enough image of this mosaic to determine whether what it is and what it looks like. And I've seen the pictures of it; it's absolutely beautiful. So I think we have what you have said. We've got a good picture of it. So, anybody have any questions so we can go ahead and vote? Okay.
So, Miss Hattie, what I'd propose we do is sort of something like informal here, just kind of a voice vote so I can understand, because I do think Lynn and I want to make sure we have a lot of things about attribution, steps written out and circulated that we would formally vote on to make sure we've dotted I's, crossed T's and all that, since it's such a big project with so many people involved. And so can I just get a sense, this is not an official vote, just get a sense from the committee who thinks this sounds like something we should aggressively pursue? Is that good? Thumbs up or yeses?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. Yes.
yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, any concerns? Obviously, people can communicate that to me as the chair of the committee, the subcommittee. But any concerns that come to mind right now that you would want to just say in this forum? It's really exciting. So I just, and Crystal, thank you for making this connection. As soon as Lynn and I started talking, it was so clear that this process and this project were perfect fit for what we're trying to do on the Walk of Recognition. So we'll at the next meeting, we will have something formal for us to vote on, and then Lynn can be assured that the classes can be integrated and move forward with a clear plan. So thank you all so much. And thank you so much, Lynn, for coming and speaking to us and sharing it.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for your time and for listening to that process. And this is exciting on my end too. It's just
Thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you. I just punched this little red button. Is that how I get off of here? Thank you so
Keelan,
much.
I'll follow
All
up.
right.
Thank you so much. We
Sounds
appreciate your
good.
time.
Thank you.
All
Sure.
right.
Okay, let's move on. Mayor, you want us to give us a brief, what you've done as far as the economist? We had talked about the economist being on, but you just give us the overview on where we are on that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Hattie. It's actually sort of been a fun exploratory task. So just let everybody know, process-wise, I contacted a former professor at the university who's written extensively on the racial wealth gap, and just asked her, can you think of anybody, particularly in Athens, so we could interact directly with them, who would have expertise in the kind of disparity analysis that could be done where we could understand how somebody who lived in Town versus somebody who lived in a similarly situated situation, flash forward 60 years, how do you define that lost wealth? And she was really excited about the idea. She's familiar with the work that all of you are doing, and I'm glad for that. And she provided me with a couple of business school professors who she thought might be a good lead. And both those professors were also excited about the project, which is sort of the resonant theme here. But both those initial leads thought like, I'm not exactly the right person to do this. I can do a piece of it, or I can kind of do some adjacent work or some connecting work, but not the right thing. But both of them also said, there's this other guy who's the guy who you want. And so they turned me on to him. And he actually is somebody who I knew, as it happens. So it's kind of funny you start with somebody who you could have gone to directly if only I had known. And so I've reached out to him. And so we're going to try and schedule a sit down with that individual who is, in the words of at least two other people, the right guy.
Okay.
And then also those other kind of intermediaries, because what I do think is that this could be a multi-step analysis. There may be different pieces of this.
Okay.
There is the direct dollar value economic impact, but then there could be these other sort of social impact spin-offs that I would think that this group and the public broadly would want to know about too.
Okay.
For example, you might want to know, well, what's the difference in likelihood of somebody who could send their kids to college if you had a mortgage that you could borrow against versus not? So some of those additional questions may follow. So in my first sit down with the two or three folks who I'm going to sit down with, I'm asking them to sort of give me some feedback on what the range of questions is that we may want to ask. So that's what I'll bring back to the group.
Okay. And
then
this person, you're going to try maybe in the next couple of months to try.
Well, I'm hoping that we can at least have an initial sit down in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
And then the other thing that was helpful and exciting is that all of them thought that this is the kind of project that a graduate student who's doing urban economics would want to give a lot of time and attention to, either because it's a possible journal article or a class assignment. So it seems like, in terms of the waving a carrot in front of folks in the academic realm, this would be a big attractive carrot.
Okay.
All right, then. If you need any help, I could give you some names too. So.
Thanks, Miss Hattie. Yeah, please do send me anybody who you have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. We were talking about the descriptions of what we wanted to do and make recommendations to the mayor commissioners. Once this economist determined the amount of money that we are owed, it will go into the budget, and then we will give recommendations on how that money will be spent. So we wrote up at least 4 things no, I think it was 5 things that that we wanted to do. But the housing, affordable housing didn't get approved because of the way that it was worded. It was not approved because of the gratuity clause. So as I want you to know that I'm going to be doing some research and recommendations, so that may come maybe later. Right now, we do have, I sent out the descriptions of the ones that we're going to talk about tonight and get a vote on those. Is there any questions before I go ahead? Continue? The first one was the Leonardtown Walk of Recognition. We want that, and that's what Jen was talking about, and the mosaic that was included in that. Because once we get that, the students and everybody else for years will know that that was a community. So we haven't, as far as I know, we still haven't got approval for UGA to put it on their side. So it's going to probably be in the city walk, the city right, city right away. Okay. Okay. I sent you all that. Do you have any questions? But right now it was total of a cost about $27,000. A lot of the work that on the mosaic is going to be done about students. Okay. So any questions about the first one, about the walk of recognition? Okay.
Obviously, those are estimates right now.
Yeah, estimates. Everything
They're
is
best guesses for the whole project, not just the mosaic, the other signage pieces as well. So it's our best guess.
We're going to come back and talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
The next one is about the Athens-Clarke County Center for Racial Justice. This is talking about a history center that we really, really want to be able to put up here in Athens, so we can educate the kids, the community about the history of Athens, what happened in the past, what's happened now, and then leave room for what's happened in the future. We want a building to be able to put this, to house this history center. So this was agreed upon that it's possible. So we can ask for a building to put this history center in. So that was the second one. Any questions about this, the history center? That we need a building, and hopefully we will get one so we can start working on that. At some point in time, I will put a subgroup together to look at this and be working on this when a building can be possibly identified that can house the Black History Center. Question? Okay, moving on. Questions? The next one we wanted to make a recommendation is high-speed internet. And this is for Clarke County to provide high-speed internet services, publicly funded for low-price utilities, basically for Athens-Clarke County residents. Any questions about that one? I mean, the description is all down here for the mayor commissioners to read, but we wanted to put the descriptions in there if there were any questions. And the last one was for proposal for minimum wage increase for Athens-Clarke County employees. This is for full-time and part-time. I think a majority of them are already at $15 an hour. Is that true, Mayor? And
Sorry, I was
so
getting myself unmuted. Yes.
okay, so okay.
We're close, and actually the commission will be receiving my draft of the budget, sort of the wet clay version, if you think about it that way, for them to continue to mold either late this week or very early next. And so what I've assigned staff to do in mine is to craft strategically how we would push the floor up to 15.
Okay. And we are going to probably, well, we are asking for at least 20. So I guess you all can discuss that as well. This is for part-time, $20 an hour for part-time and for full-time employees. Any questions? You had this and you looked over. Any questions about either one of them?
Nope.
Okay. Now let's talk about, we don't have the exact dollar amount. And I am going to be looking at the affordable housing one and maybe come back with, if I finish my research, to see what that would look like. And I had talked to you all about putting percentages by each one of these brief recommendations. So do you want to go ahead and I got this line here divided. We can put whatever we want. I put the Walker recognition and the minimum wage together. So we can divide those two up to 25% and 25%. And then I have the walk of recognition and the Black History Center together. We can put the percentages at now before we get the number from the economist. So we'll know what that is, or how do you want to do it? And it's any recommendations? Anybody have any recommendations? Because
From
we
dealing with contractors and building and stuff lately, it's hard to put a percentage
okay,
on something like that. Because you thinking one price and then somebody gonna come back at you with this huge boom. No, we can't do it for that. So, somebody that really knows about it, that can put a price on it. Because we sitting around here, we don't know about, what kind of price to put on it.
I think just in addition to that sort of very challenging economic environment,
Mhm.
you know, one thing that wouldn't put a number on things, but would sort of set a conceptual goal,
Okay,
would be to suggest that you would want a bigger set of things to be, I guess, what I would call substantive or sort of life supporting, things like wages and housing, versus saying, oh, well, the majority of the work is going to be the center and the walk. Not that the center and the walk are not important, and not that symbols generally are not important, but it may be, and again, I'm not a voting member of this group, but it may be something that this group wants to recommend, to say that we want the biggest pool of dollars put into those things that are going to functionally change people's lives.
okay,
And I would just say that housing and wages are those things.
okay.
So when there's a budget for this assigned, how is it administered? Like, is it like, so we determine some number, some budget with the project priorities. How will that be administered? Over what time period? Is it a one-time thing? Is it ongoing? I don't understand the budget mechanism yet, like for how it's administered.
And I don't think anybody has suggested that, except that what I would say broadly is that, one would think, given that the costs have been ongoing, that the benefits ought to be ongoing too.
Exactly. Yes. It seems that maybe this committee needs to do a work session, like where it's not one of these meetings. It's more, it's however we have to do that in terms of the public being notified and watching, but to do a bit of a hybrid between what Mayor Gertz just said, but then prioritizing ourselves, right? Because it may be, I mean, you can think of how SPLOST is or something. Like it may be that we need to sort of say, these are the high priority projects. Then when those can be completed, we move on to these. I mean, because they're totally a different nature. I mean, wages, is important, right? But that should be integrated across the government, as I know you are doing, Mayor Goetz, right? So like, maybe actually we need to do more substantive material things related to urban renewal and the communities at hand in this particular that are the subject of this particular committee. That's the word I'm looking for, our committee. as opposed to things that really should be shared among many governmental units and as a priority. You know, because like if we're going to do this walk of recognition, it's going to have a cost, right? And we have to just pay for it some way or another, or we can't, or we shouldn't, you know, or you know, for committing to that, for example. And maybe our group could come up with what are our priorities as money is brought in and able to be distributed out. Because we may not be able to do it all, or we might. We just don't know yet because we don't have numbers. Does that make sense?
We don't have numbers, but we know that the money is going to be there. Okay. This we know.
And so this will be a special fund. Like, does it, like, it'll be a special fund and somebody will be in charge of using it to pay for the projects that are determined by this committee. Is that correct? Obviously in conversation with Mayor and Commission. So recommended by this committee.
Recommendations to them, but the funds, that's why we get in the economist, is to say that the funds is going to be there, and then we're going to say once that we determine how much money that is, then we're going to say, well, use this much here and this one here. For instance, the Black History Center, we want so much of that fund money to go there, with the building, and to modify it to house the Black History Center. Now, if y'all think that we need to prioritize these, I mean, we got all 4 of them except the one for housing, then we can do a couple of us can get together and prioritize them, and we can come back to this team. We can come back. I don't know how this will affect the budget, Mayor.
To Jen's question of a minute ago, even that hasn't been sort of a determination whether this is sort of a set aside box, so to speak, right, or whether that sort of transcends a box and should be infused into government activities broadly. Yeah, that's an open question.
Okay.
So where are we going to get an answer from to that? Have we got to work through that with the?
I think that's just a question to work through. Okay. And I think we would have to sit down and kind of come up with just a couple of models of how that would work. And, you know, I mean, even some of the kind of recent sort of analysis literature of, you know, of other communities, whether it's, you know, here, Syracuse, Asheville, St. Paul, I mean, you know, they're all asking the same question. You know, this is sort of the conceptual elephant in the room is like, well, how do you do this? You know, how do you get to the moon? Do you put a bunch of helium balloons together? Do you build a big ladder? You know, it's definitely the diciest part of the work. Given, and I mean, I think Jen, you referenced this, that, you know, there are all of these associated institutions. You know, you've got, you know, private sector beneficiaries of urban renewal. You've got, you know, other public sector players, whether that's the federal government who'd, you know, provided 80% of the dollar value, you know, when the properties were taken by eminent domain, or, you know, third party public entity characters like the University System of Georgia. This is the toughest part of it. So I think it probably will be the part that'll take the longest amount of time and the most work.
Okay. Do you think we ought to create a subgroup to work on this and then bring it back?
I think it's going to take that.
Okay. All right. I'll be putting a subgroup together, and we'll come back the next meeting. Okay. Is that agreeable with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. The last thing I don't think. Well, getting back to this, okay, there's another piece of financial piece that goes in here too, and that's UGA, and when we'll be talking about that in the subgroup, and how we're going to approach that piece as well. Okay. Crystal and I are going to be holding some informational meetings for the public to communicate how the Justice and Memory Team is at, what their responsibilities are and what their roles and how we've been working together. And we are going to be doing that this coming Thursday. But that maybe will change too. I have to get with Crystal since we're talking about forming a subgroup to talk about the budget recommendations. So we'll talk about it, Crystal, okay? And the last thing I want to talk about is when we talked with a class at UGA and with I think it was the same, wasn't it with, what's her name? Just left the meeting. Jennifer.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm starting to round up dinner for my 8-year-old. Yes, it was with Dr. Bussell. Yes, that you had that meeting, correct?
Okay, Dr. Bussell has agreed to her class over there has agreed to put a quilt together for Town, and they are going to build it, make it, and they're going to hang it on campus, and they're going to talk to us, and if we want to put pictures in this quilt, they would do that, and they're going to move it to different parts of the campus, as well as training cards for people to understand about Town, and they're going to put those on campus as well, and they're going to be talking to us about that as well. So the art committee art students are really working with us, and we really appreciate them working with us. Does anybody have anything else? I will be forming a subcommittee and reaching out and getting in touch with individuals. If nobody have anything else, the meeting is adjourned, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Okay.
Oh, Hattie, I'll send you a separate Zoom link for our meeting after this.
Okay.
Okay, see you soon.
All right.